Welcome to the Grandpa Channel. I'm Steve Harris, but my grandkids call me Rivers. Here we ask a simple question. What did life teach you the hard way? Because a lifetime reveals things you can't learn any other way. On this show, we sit down with people who've lived a little, stumbled a little, and learned a few things along the way. So pull up a chair, because what a lifetime reveals can steady another. Good morning and welcome to the Grandpa Channel. I'm Rivers. Given name is Steve, but you can call me Rivers. And I'm here with one of my very, very, very best friends. Art is one of those people in your life who listens and is a fountain of wisdom. And I have leaned on Art for various things over the years and have found that his wisdom and ideas have blessed my life. So I'm going to really hit you with a tough question right off the bat. And that, what has life taught you the hard way?
Well, that's a difficult question. I suppose that we all go through difficulties that we have to face and grab onto. There's no avoiding that. Even those people who appear to have a charmed life, in many instances, are suffering in deeper ways than we know. And it's important not to assume that somebody is doing just great. There are often cracks in the veneer that, if you look closely, you can see. I would suppose that probably the most difficult situation that I've had to deal with in my early life were the divorces that my parents went through. They were married in 1955, and I was born in 57. Had a good marriage for the first probably 3 years or so, and then things began to fall apart. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and we moved cross country, ended up in the Los Angeles area, actually in Compton. So my first memories are really I'm straight out of Compton. So my first memories are of California, and my father was gone a lot. He was working on developing translator stations for TVs. And when a station broadcasts in a local market, they position translators around the area in order to improve the signal to more rural communities where you don't have a clear path. And in his process of going from one place to the other, he would find people who would let him kite surf, and those tended to be girlfriends. So he would come home with his laundry nice and clean and freshly starched, and my mother would go, "I know you didn't do this. I'm pretty sure this is not the work of a local laundress either." At any rate, things began to get a little worse, and his attitude was, "Well, I love you. They're just people that, they don't matter," which is an interesting approach. But he had a hard growing up period, and was an orphan by the age of 9, had been bounced around a lot. So I don't know, maybe that affected what his thoughts were about relationships and how to make them work. Judith Wallerstein said that divorces in the lives of children are, one, the end of childhood. I think that's accurate. And two, they're like an earthquake with multiple aftershocks. They keep coming, and you learn to be wary of commitment, wary of making things right, but you also hope to make commitments work and to have a relationship that will work. I learned to be fairly fearless early on about approaching anything that I wanted to do. But at the same time, I was always aware of where the back door was. I could slip out the side window, whatever it took. So the pathway to marriage for me was fraught with difficulties. And I think the marriage is one of the most important decisions that you can make. And for me, I lacked the confidence to believe that I could make a good decision in that direction. I'm exceptionally grateful to my wife for the 43 years of marriage that we've been through so far. And I'm well aware that I could probably still mess it up. Thankfully, she's forgiving and loving and kind, and I'm very grateful for that. So that forms the genesis of what I would say is a major hardship. Now, there have been job difficulties, there have been illnesses, there have been other things that have come along. They've also been difficult to work with. And in the midst of holding relationships together, those things can sometimes become catalysts to either draw your relationship closer or they can tear it apart. I approached marriage gingerly, to say the least. I knew my wife for 2 years before we began to date, but She's been a great blessing. We knew each other for a couple of years, and then we dated for 3. Any sane person would have been able to see that this is a good relationship. You should move forward with this. But I wanted to have a full-on yes or no from higher powers that this made sense. So I spent a fair amount of time fasting and praying and trying to figure out whether this was the right thing or not. And eventually, I did receive an answer. That answer was, you decide and I'll bless you. And so with great trepidation and with a feeling that I might vomit at any time, this is so unromantic, but you're talking about somebody who was part of the walking wounded from a relationship perspective, but she was in love with me, and frankly, that's probably what caused it to work. There's an old Irish proverb that says, "Don't marry the one you love, marry the one that loves you."
Real.
Yeah, that may sound a little off, but if you think about it from the Savior's perspective, who loves us more and who's willing to give as much as he did? It's actually a great compliment to the person who loves you, and it recognizes their greater strength and power. So I'm thankful that my wife loved me enough to oversee my flaws and look beyond them, and has been a wonderful wife and mother for all these decades, now that we're in our 5th decade together.
Wonderful. One thing that I know quite a bit from over the years that we've talked about your dad, but what positive lessons did you take away from your dad? Maybe what not to do, or did you learn some other lessons from him that you found surprising?
That's a good question. My brother and I have a joke. It's not really that funny, but when we're in difficult circumstances, we think, what would our father do? And then we do almost the opposite, and it usually works out fairly well.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are 2 sides to relationships and how we learn from each other. If we love each other, then we tend to have a unity with each other where we're all working together. If there's a problem, then on the other side, you can still be enthralled to each other, whether there's love or whether there's not. And I believe I loved my father, but I didn't trust that he would do the things that were going to be beneficial in our relationships. And the switch that came for me was not to be, here's where you have maybe a loving relationship and on the other side a distrustful relationship. It's still the same tidal pool. It's still the same gravitational well that you're dealing with. But when you can actually recognize the person's good points and say, okay, you are doing this right, you're doing that right, recognize these good things. Escaping that was an important development in the arc of understanding and working with relationships. I have a son-in-law, wonderful young man, not young, he wouldn't think young anymore, but I think of him as young, Adam, who told me a little while ago, he said, I really like the way you guys work in your family. So often in our family, we have a disagreement and we kind of gloss over it. We won't really talk it through. It'll just pop out. Sometimes it's harbored for years. In your family, and I'm with my wife, with Jessica, my oldest daughter, she says she brings something up, we go through it, and then it's over. It's done. And when it's done, it's done. It's not something that you harbor. I thought that was a great compliment. One of the issues that, and I'm not sure that it's true for everybody, some people, and there are times when I think in my life I've just wanted, let's get this over with, let's figure it out, let's talk it through, end it. Whatever we need to do, let's move it to its best termination point. And at times, there's more wisdom in waiting. And I'm not sure that I always know when that is. I try to listen and try to figure out whether it's time to let it go and just wait. When I was dating my wife, and she swears this isn't true, but I assure you it is. When I was dating her, she would often ask me, or I would ask her something about an opinion about something or other, and she would ask me, well, what do you think? And I knew what I thought, but I said to her, I don't want you to be influenced by what I think, because I do, and I'll tell you, but I'd like you to express your thoughts first so that you don't feel like you're just having to agree with me. I want you to simply be you. And she would often go quiet. And I had developed an ability to simply be quiet in return. In other words, let it pass, move to the next thing. And then some weeks, sometimes days, sometimes weeks later, she would pop up with the answer to that question. And I'd say, you're answering my question. She'd been thinking about it. And she wouldn't say, hey, I want to revisit that. She would simply start talking about it. And I'd listen, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Now, the beauty of that, it's a little bit selfish, is I love to learn. I want to learn what other people are thinking, because sometimes they come up with a point of view that I hadn't considered. And I end up saying, that makes sense. I should alter my thought process and add that to whatever it is that we're talking about or working through. There's always something to add to the horizon of, well, as I grow older, I call it the horizon of my ignorance. It continues to expand. It's larger as years go by. Probably that's one of the greater benefits that I've had. With regard to relationships, I believe they are some of the most important things that we can have. Emerson wrote, I will not treat friendship daintily, but with roughest courage. For when they are real, they're not thin glass threads or frostwork, but the solidest things. It's a treasured thing when we can be ourselves with others and love people as they are. Yes, learn more, grow more, increase, improve. Those are givens. If somebody is unwilling to continue to grow and they're headed for a collision, it's going to be a problem when the red lights come and they just plow through traffic. It's not a good idea to do some of those things. So you recognize the signs, you learn to move forward or wait. And I think those are things that I learned at least partially from my father in dealing with him. He was difficult. He was difficult to deal with. And so when I deal with difficult people, in many instances, I find myself saying, you're really not that difficult to deal with.
I've seen worse.
That's right. I've seen.
Art, when in your life do you feel the most alive? I mean, that brings you the greatest joy. And tell me why it gives you such joy.
Well, that's a good question. I feel most alive, most happiest when I'm contemplating and engaging in the process of creating and being in the neighborhood of beauty.
Really?
Whether it's skiing through 20 inches of new powder high on the mountain, or whether it's riding a bike up through single track, or whether it's being at a museum and looking at incredible works of art, whether it's being engaged in the creative flow. I've always liked and been involved in some form of art. When I was a little boy, I would spend a lot of time drawing. And as I moved forward in school, I found myself always drawn to just making things, just creating things. I did that all through high school in a lot of different ways. In high school, I used to carve signs for businesses. I would trade them for things that I didn't have money for. If I needed a new pair of ski boots, I'd target a ski shop and say, you need my signs. Figure out something that I could do that was a great deal for them and good for me. As I got older, and I worked in a lot of different media, but as I got older, I found myself moving more toward writing. When you're in the midst of a creative flow and are able to create something that somebody reads or that I read and go, that worked. That worked. It's or understanding and appreciating the works of others. It's a lovely thing. When I'm with somebody who likewise enjoys, who finds similar joy in those things, it's amplified. It's even better. It's a wonderful process to be able to be part of that creative strength that some people refer to as flow. When you're in flow, everything's working. And it doesn't matter if you're being hit by bricks or windows are shattering all around you. When you're in a state of flow, everything's working. It's both time slowing down and time speeding up. It's everything coming together in a different way. Teaching, I enjoy teaching. And then people have asked me, well, aren't you afraid? I said, no, I'm not at all. Give me a room full of very bright people. They're the most fun to teach. Because really all you have to do is just ask a few questions. And if you ask a few questions, You can moderate the flow through the questions, work toward insights. And insights are the process of getting the water to boil. You bring it to a boil and it just begins to pop up with new ideas. The branches of spring, new flowers, everything is just radiating out of that thought. So it's not so much the sage on the stage. I'm not particularly enamored of that approach to teaching, but rather ask a question, draw it out, and recognize that even those who may not seem to be oracles often have much to offer.
Mm-hmm.
Just allow the time for it to happen. Give them room, and they'll, if they're willing, if they feel able to speak their mind, good things will come of it. The job of a teacher is really just to recognize when there's a good thread, pick it up, move it on, ask for amplification, allow it to move forward. It's not so much sharing what you know as it is amplifying what they know and helping them to find those central pieces that really add to something beautiful. And then encouraging it. It's pretty simple.
How do you personally get to a position where you've got that, you're in the flow?
Well, for me, it's critical, and it's been very helpful to me to, when I get up every morning, I spend some time in prayer, and I'm constantly trying to improve my prayer. I'm not naturally an incredible grateful person, but I spend time working through what I'm grateful for in the difficult things that I'm dealing with, the problems that sit before me. How can I find the good in it? And the process of thanking for what I've received, though it may not be precisely what I thought I ordered when I walked into the great restaurant of life. It's funny, the dish that shows up isn't always what you thought it was going to be.
Sometimes it's humble pie and you didn't order it, right?
I seem to get that as an appetizer almost every day. So getting into a state of flow is, I think, a process of getting into, as much as possible, a unity with the divine, being a part of that and recognizing it and approaching it with reverence and dignity and being grateful for it is really, it's been seminal in helping me to get to a state of flow. I was looking at the story of Sherem in Jacob, who is the first Antichrist that you have. And I thought, I wonder if that's a Hebrew word. I looked it up and just Googled the word, and it came up. Yes, it is a word. It's cherem. And it means to be fully dedicated. But the interesting thing is it can be a full dedication to good or a full dedication to evil. It's a sealing up of your efforts. And when we are sealed up to evil, it's a bad place to be. The creative flow can be both negative and positive in nature. And in order to have the creative flow be a building process, you need to be able to work in that flow that cycles upward. Think of a whirlwind growing larger and larger as it arcs over to the top. It can also lead to destruction on the other side. So I think that the word Sherem in the Book of Mormon isn't actually the name of the guy. I think they simply referred to him as what he was. It's more of a type. And over hundreds of years, they referred to him as that man who was sealed up. It's recognizing two sides of the same coin. There's a positive flow and there's a negative flow. Art, in many instances, leads people to a dark flow. And there can be good in that, because in order to really create, you need to have honesty. And that honesty is often found in letting go of everything and just free falling back into whatever it is that life has around you. Mm-hmm. There's also incredible danger in that. The life of an artist is always a little bit on the edge. It's those who exist in the center rarely have the kind of creative flow that is truthful. It ends up being something like Soviet art. It can be executed well, but it's simply more, the art of the Third Reich. It's not to say that there weren't talented, skilled artists, and some of the best art to come out of the Soviet Union is peasant art, the art that, where people were painting things that were not part of the collective, so to speak. And we in America, of course, tend to be very individualistic. And that individualism can also be a problem. There is wisdom in acting together. And being part of the flow requires us, I think, to be one with the author of that flow. And if we can find a way to the author of that flow, then our art becomes stunningly powerful.
And our art could be any sort of thing, not just a painting or a
Absolutely.
music. It could be, I mean, it could be a million and one different things.
It's how we move through life. It's how we move. It's the arc of days. It's the walk of, it's both the run as well as the silently standing for a moment. It's all things rolled together in one. It's your past, your present, your future. And it comes with a great spark of humility. It's not so much that we're doing everything right in any moment, but it is realizing that we're moving toward that rightness. It's like tuning into a radio frequency. In the old analog days, you could tune across the frequency and you'd have it gradually come into phase. And once you're phase linear, you have the of that waveform working with that in FM, that 2 meter waveform that is absolutely tuned in, and you're getting a crystal clear signal. I love being in the midst of that signal.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm really tuned in, when I can feel it coming across on all sides. It's just fabulous to be in the midst of that. And it can happen almost anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Almost anywhere.
Do you think that you can command it though, Art, or is it something that you kind of surrender to or submit to, and then it comes when it comes?
I think it's both. Artists who are the most successful just create. They work. Their production is awesome. Whether you're dealing with someone like Stephen King, he just learned to write consistently. I'm not a horror fan, but I recognize that he has created a lot. Look at if you look at Monet, there is a lot of Monet out there. There is a great deal of it. He painted and painted. His canvases are available. Really, you can have a Monet for not very much money, if all you want's a Monet. It may not be the best of his work, but he just produced. He worked and he worked. There are those who say that if you want to be a writer, they refer to their pen as the Nazi. The Nazi requires you to do it. It's a very hard thing to be. And yet at the same time, I believe at the core of it, we are all artists. We all have some beauty that's waiting to be released from within. And if people can see that, then they begin to work into the joy of life.
Another kind of left field sort of question is, when you think about the younger people in your life, and obviously that could be kids, it could be grandkids, it could be friends, it could be people you come in contact with, what do you think younger people in your life may not yet see or understand about your journey? What would you like them to understand about your journey?
Well, of course, as I look at my kids, as I look at the children of other people, I see them flinching at the difficulties, and there are major difficulties. There have been people who have said to me, I don't know whether I want to bring children into this world. I think that what I encourage them to do is maybe disconnect a little bit from the media that's feeding them. And if they can pull back and come to that sense of self, then a measure of optimism returns. I think I'm becoming, in a way, more optimistic with age. Many people have exactly the opposite. As they grow older, they become more pessimistic. If you look at the arc of Samuel Clemens' life, Mark Twain, he became very dark toward the end of his life. And that's a fairly common thing to do. I endured enough darkness when I was young that my climb into light is something that continues to increase. And I owe that to the gospel. I owe that to the truth of God as he is intersected in my life, and of the promises, the hope, the lively hope that Christ really is an answer. And that's been a gradual arc as well, learning and appreciating that over time. And I'm very grateful for it.
I love that. And I guess, this kind of leads to another question too, is let's say that you have a random 28-year-old that runs across this podcast or knows you, and what would you hope lingers with this 28-year-old as he or she kind of marches forward into the future. I like to say that I have far more questions than I had when I was a 30-year-old, but I have the answers that I have are more powerful than they were when I was 30. So maybe that's interconnected with optimism.
Yeah. Now, I remember when I was about 14 or so, we were having family on evening with a our stake patriarch. His name was Wilfred Edling, and he we were living in Huntsville, Utah. So, and he was talking about the joy that people said that we shouted for joy when we learned that we would be able to come to Earth, get a body. And I asked, were we stupid? What were we thinking? We were shouting for joy. I'd be gripping the edge of the slide with all 10 toes and all fingers. No, I'm not going down there. Not this how could we be, this doesn't look like joy to me. And the world in many ways sucks the joy out of things. It's difficult. And he said, we shouted for joy because we knew it was the only way that we could become like our Father, God. And we loved that idea of becoming like him and his Son, Jesus Christ. And I thought, that's a good answer. And I've always remembered it. It was a good answer. I can see why we would have shouted for joy for that. And the process of reaching for joy and the process of finding joy is really a process of joining with he who is the creator of all things. And he invites us to do so. He invites us to hear him and know him. The word hearken means to hear and know. Hearken, hear me, know me. And I think, wow, what an invitation. How can we really do that? And I've found that through grace we can, not because of anything we're worthy of. Our efforts are weak. We're messes in many ways, but we sometimes really get on his wavelength, and that's a fabulous place to be.
And that's flow, right?
That's flow. That's flow. And it's a reason for optimism. No matter what we're facing, it's a reason for looking forward, saying, even if we don't make it through, even if something happens, even if we end up like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace of life, even if we have all the difficulties of Job, we still can have faith that it will work. Life ends, sometimes prematurely, and there will be judgments that are made for those who create those endings and who abuse and create living hells on earth. But there is still a reason to be optimistic. And this is not just a philosophical conceit. This is a truth that I have found in my soul. And by found, I don't mean that it's come from within my soul, but rather it's a gift that's been given to me. I would ask that 28-year-old would just experiment and find out whether they too can find that truth. That's what I would hope, because it has led me from one light to another and to another.
Great answer. Coming down the home stretch, I'm going to ask you, and you're a very modest man, but of course you have much to be modest about. That's what Winston Churchill, I fall in a similar category. But, putting all false modesty aside, what are a couple of superpowers that you have accumulated from the School of Hard Knocks / mortality that you'd like to share with us?
I would say that when I am in flow, I have certain capacities, but without the Spirit working with me, it's so hollow. There's so little left to it. But when it's with me, it amplifies and becomes much more powerful. I would say that if I have anything approaching a superpower, it would be to dissect and help people solve the problems that they're facing, if they're willing to look for an answer. It's to reach back to a third thing, a tertium quid, something that we use to measure ourselves by, which is outside ourselves, and say, using these measures, here's an approach that you can use that I found useful And I find it humbling because I almost always recognize that in saying anything that somebody helping them out of a problem, I recognize that I face the same problem in some ways, perhaps in another area of my life. So it's not me bestowing wisdom on them by any means, but rather it's us together finding a measure of wisdom. And there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is the acquisition of facts. Wisdom is the proper application of those facts. It's the difference between belief and faith. Faith is applied. Wisdom is applied knowledge. Those two flow together. So if we can apply what we built on, if we can use the lessons of the past, if we can use those who have come before us and stand on their shoulders, we're likely to reach greater heights. If we don't, we don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a happy place to be.
No, but, it kind of, in my mind, Art, kind of to tie this all up, I love the discussion that we've had with flow. And I want to be in flow more often than I think I am. Maybe I am in flow at certain times when even I don't think I am. But to me, flow is being led by the promptings of the Spirit and
Yes.
acting upon them.
Yes.
And why would we not want to be in flow? Flow can be inconvenient, I think.
Yes.
And there's times when I don't feel like going to flow. But I know that I need to be in that place. I've loved our discussion. You're giving me a lot to think about over the last little while that we've talked. And I just really appreciate you as a friend, and thank you for coming on. That's it for today's episode of the Grandpa Channel. If something you heard made you laugh, pause, or see life a little differently, pass it along. We're gathering the lessons people learned the hard way, the stories, the second thoughts, and the wisdom that only comes with time. And we'd love to hear yours. What did life teach you the hard way? Until next time, keep the perspective honest and the stories coming. I'm Rivers, and I'm out of here.